Vandy Crane here, recording here on Tewa territory in the so-called Española, New Mexico. So today we're going to talk about Indigenous mindfulness and how this is a powerful tool for healing. And I'm going to be sharing some practices to support mindfulness. And these practices are going to include becoming mindful of our body through posture and through breathing, and how learning to breathe can help us heal from trauma and can really transform our lives to create the lives that we want and we deserve to live. So let's get into it. These practices can be done anywhere, almost anytime. Obviously, if you're driving, there's some practices you don't want to do for safety reasons. So right now I'm sitting on the floor. Personally, I love to sit on the floor anywhere, sitting on the earth, anywhere where I'm closer to the earth, I feel better. Right now I'm at the Create Inner Peace studio. They're nice enough to allow me to record here, and a lot of the materials I'm sharing comes from their workbook, their manual that was created for first responders dealing with critical incident stress. So, you can practice sitting on the floor. You can practice sitting in a chair. The most important thing is that you're mindful of your posture. And essentially, mindfulness is paying attention. I don't care how broke I've been in life. I've always been able to, well, no, I shouldn't say that. I've learned that the ability to focus and pay attention is really my real currency, because it allows me to get things done for myself and my family and my community. So no matter how broke I am, I can always pay attention. And that's why we're creating this series. In addition to the professional and survivor leadership trainings that we've created, we want everyone to have access to resources to support our healing. So right now it's a gray day in July. It's raining. It's nice and cool out, which is different. And I'm enhancing the sounds of rain in the background because we know water is our first medicine. So that just adds to the healing ambiance. So when you do your practice, your mindfulness practice, set your space, set your intention. If rain is relaxing to you, or a thunderstorm, or sounds of a creek, if you can't get out in nature, simulate that connection with some peaceful background noise. So no matter where you choose to practice, if you're sitting on the floor, on the earth, or in a chair, you want your posture to be aligned. You want your spine as straight as possible. You want your chin slightly tucked, head slightly back. What this does is the end of your brain, it connects it to the spinal column and allows cerebral spinal fluid to flow through your body uninterrupted or unimpeded. In Eastern medicine, the channels that are worked with in practices like acupuncture, yoga. I think even massage studies are rooted in some of this foundation, the Eastern foundational studies. There's 72,000 meridians in the body, or excuse me, there's, I think, 81 meridians and 72,000 nadis. It's a Sanskrit word that means rivers. So there's all these little rivers of energy that flow through us in the Eastern concept of the body. So the more aligned our posture is, the straighter our back, lifting our chest to the sky, our hearts to the sky, bringing the shoulder blades back. I've heard it said, like, imagine that you have wings and you're opening your wings. And to open your wings, you have to bring your shoulder blades together. So we're opening our wings. This allows us to breathe easier. One of the effects that trauma has on our ability to breathe is that trauma locks our diaphragm. Our diaphragm is this big muscle that's at the bottom of our rib cage. And when we inhale, it's supposed to bend. And when we exhale, it's supposed to bend. But oftentimes, because of trauma, constant stress, that muscle becomes real rigid. And even breathing gives us more anxiety. One of the things I've noticed over the years working with trauma survivors is when beginning a breathing practice or beginning to learn to breathe, it actually increases the anxiety. And a lot of people back away because they don't think it works, when really healing is not a comfortable experience. Healing often requires pain and suffering to get through to the other side of the healing. And Western medicine, allopathic medicine, pharmaceuticals, what they teach us to do is just mask the symptoms, cover up the symptoms, treat the symptoms. And in the long run, the underlying conditions just get worse. Make things look good on the outside, don't worry about the inside. But really, healing, true healing is the opposite. Focus on the inside to produce the results we want to see on the outside. So, breathing. Taking a deep breath in and slowly exhaling, and just really paying attention to your breath. Is it hard to inhale? Is it hard to hold the breath or pause? Is it hard to slowly exhale? Just notice your breath and where there may be any resistance, any feelings of anxiety, anything like that. Breathing is the first thing we do when we come into this world. It's the last thing we do when we leave this world. Yet so little focus is given to this sacred breath of life. So a huge aspect of mindfulness is bringing more attention to our breath. And if you are noticing that you experience some anxiety when you intentionally breathe, there's a very easy practice that you can do, another mindfulness practice that stretches that diaphragm that locks up, that causes our anxiety when we try to breathe. So, real basic exercise, and you're not going to be able to see it. I'll do it and I'll explain what I'm doing. So I'll inhale, pause, hold the breath, inhale a little bit more, Hold the breath for as long as comfortably possible, and then slowly start to exhale. And then once that breath is completely out, hold. Hold it out. Exhale a little more. Keep holding the breath out. And inhale when you need to. So that was, I don't have a timer with me, but that was a simulation of what would be like a 1 minute breath. And that's a way that you can bring yourself out of a panic attack, or you can get someone else out of a panic attack, is bringing that focus to the breath. And what you want to do is you want to inhale as long as possible, as close to 30 seconds as you can. Hold the breath for as long as possible, as close to 30 seconds as you can. And then exhale for as long as possible, as close to 30 seconds as you can. And on the inhale and the exhale, you want to pause. And then inhale and exhale a little bit more on each of those, and hold. And you will feel a sense of panic on that hold because you're doing something unnatural. You're not breathing. But that act of not breathing stretches that diaphragm, that muscle that gets locked up from constant trauma and stress. So when we're able to put focus on our breath, and it doesn't have to be a long time, you don't have to sit and breathe for an hour. You can start with 1 minute breath a day, or one attempt at a 1 minute breath a day, and then move it to paying attention to your breath for 3 minutes. We all have these little devices we carry in our pockets, and most of the time, they don't contribute to our health in meaningful ways, but we can use these devices, our little cell phones. We can use those to hold ourselves accountable to having good health and good wellness and peace of mind, and creating peace that we want in our lives. We can set timers on our cell phones, and we can also use our phones as timers to do these mindfulness practices. I'm a really big fan of doing these practices out in nature. I'll be making more of our videos out in nature, like our previous videos. Today wasn't the day for that, though, due to the rain. But that's okay, because at this beautiful space that we get to share today. So in addition to posture, breath, there are 3 more practices that we can do to increase our mindfulness. And these practices include internal focus, internal locks, and energetic seals. As Indigenous people, we know that everything is energy, and that there is a spirit world that exists in parallel to our physical world. So we know that subtle action through ceremony, song, prayer, dancing, singing, all of those have very huge impacts. And that's why culture is so important. And that's why historically, there's always been a drive to make Indigenous people specifically Black and Indigenous people, we're all Indigenous to somewhere, forget our historical identities, because that's where our power lies, is in our identity. So this mindfulness practice is really powerful in helping us to reclaim and restabilize those identities through healing our nervous systems, through healing our mind, through creating a sense of peace in our being so that we can navigate the forces of external violence that we're still met with every day in and outside of our communities and within ourselves. I think that's the most important thing I've realized in recovery, is that I am responsible for creating a safe space within myself so that I am capable of creating and maintaining a safe space for others, which is very challenging. It's not easy. So back to the mindfulness practices. The next practice is what's called, in yoga, it's called mudras. And these can be used in mindfulness and meditation practices. They are external seals. Oh, excuse me, they are energetic seals. And we do them from the outside. So I think everybody's seen like pictures of like people from the East, like Buddha, or there's a goddess called Kuan Yin. I think even pictures of historical Jesus have these individuals making signs with their hands. These signs have a function. They're not just like gang signs or hand signs or sign language. They have energetic functions. So in the Eastern view, Indigenous view, we're connected to not just the elements here on Earth, but we're also connected to the celestial elements. And that's a foundational belief in many Indigenous cultures on this side of the globe as well. A lot of our ceremonies have to do with constellations or stars or star knowledge or understanding. So this knowledge is applicable in a universal sense as well. So each one of our fingers has an energetic effect. The thumb represents our human ego, our will to survive, our will to go work and build and create for future generations, and our human ego. This finger, the index finger, is said to be connected to the planet of Jupiter, or however your Indigenous belief identifies that celestial body. And those qualities or energy that comes with that celestial body is wisdom and expansion, evolution. The middle finger, and I'm not flicking you guys off, the middle finger is Saturn, or however your culture identifies that celestial body. And that specific energy quality is harsh lessons, father energy, harsh lessons. The ring finger represents the sun, and the pinky finger represents Mercury, or however your culture identifies that celestial body. And those qualities are communication. Forgot to say the sun. Obviously, the sun is energy, right? Life. We use this energy seal to energize and to repair and restore the nervous system, So mudras can come in several different, like this is a mudra. It's not just the sign for heavy metal. It's an actual signs, like you can sit with your hands on your knees and practice breathing. And this specific hand posture heals and restores your nervous system. This specific posture helps with the respiratory system and breathing because of the meridians associated with these fingers. I mean, meridians are like the big rivers, and then nadis are the little rivers of energy in our bodies. So the reason why our hands are so strongly connected to energy when we're developing in the womb, when we're just a little embryo of life. Our heart is the first organ that develops, and then everything develops around the heart. And then we have our spine and our brains, and from our brains, our little hands begin to develop in the mother's womb. And from that development, our hands have a special connection to our brains and to the energy that affects our thinking, our emotions, and our behavior. A common therapy for people recovering from substance abuse or depression or all the other symptoms that go along with historical trauma is cognitive behavioral therapy. And in that framework, our thinking drives our emotions, and our emotions drive our behavior. So if we can change the way we think, we can change the way we feel, and we can change how we act. So energy seals, mudras, hand postures, very subtle, simple mindfulness practice that we can incorporate with the breathing and with being mindful of our posture. The next practice is bands or bandas or locks. And these are internal. You cannot see these. So I will practice them and describe what I am practicing to you. These are very helpful in grounding and a symptom called disassociation, where we feel outside of our bodies. And a lot of times when we have unresolved trauma, we will disassociate. We will not be in our bodies. We will act out in a way that we would not act if we were fully in our bodies and in control of our decisions, and therefore create more trauma or create more sources of feeling shame for our behavior, our relapse, acting out, all the different ways that our trauma manifests. Self-sabotage, it's a really common one. So these locks help us get back to our body. The first lock is the root lock. If you've ever heard of a Kegel, if you're a woman, it's like that, flexing your inner reproductive organs. And if you're a man, kind of the same thing, I think. I don't know, I'm not a man, but contract your reproductive organs and your organs of elimination. That's the best way I could say it without being ick. So all your lower muscles, contract those. That's the root lock. Now, if you have high blood pressure, you don't want to do a root lock until you get your blood pressure stabilized, because root lock can raise your blood pressure. It's that effective. Root lock is something that can be practiced to restore our energy in our lower body after sexual trauma. The next lock going up our spine is the, oh gosh, I forgot the name of it. Upara lock. I forgot the name of it in Sanskrit. If anyone remembers, who has a background in yoga or mindfulness, feel free to drop it in the comments. But this lock is our diaphragm lock, just talking about the breath. So this lock is exhaling all the air out. And you can see that lock. When I'm engaging that lock, you can see it up here in my collarbone. And essentially, I'm taking my diaphragm, I'm exhaling all the air out, and I'm pushing my diaphragm up in my rib cage. And what these energetic locks do is they move energy in our body. Emotions have been described as energy in motion. And a lot of times when we have survived not just a lifetime of trauma, but generations of trauma, these emotions, these energies get stuck in our DNA, they get stuck in our bodies and become dis-ease. So the more we're able to move this energy and release these emotions, the more capable we are of healing and having wellness, physical, emotional, and spiritual and mental wellness. So that specific lock, let's see if I can find it in my notes. Well, I can't. So we have the root lock, the diaphragm lock, and then I went over the first one in the beginning, talking about posture, but it's the neck lock. So it's sitting up straight, chin in, head slightly back, chin slightly tucked. You want your chin down because that'll obstruct the flow of energy. Slightly tucked, shoulders back, and that is the neck lock. And then you can engage all three, and that is the great lock, which is used in ancient meditative practices for mindfulness that have origins in India, where Christopher Columbus thought he was when he called the original inhabitants of Turtle Island Indians. So anyways, it's one big joke. Ha. uh, so I think that is, oh, there's one more mindfulness practice. And that is the internal eye gaze. There's multiple places that you can focus your eyes. So you can focus your eyes here. They wear that dot there to represent keeping focus on the mind's eye, the belief that we have more than two eyes, we have a third eye, and that third eye is the place of our intuition, our ability to see. And I've found that when recovering from trauma, this having this mind's eye is having this movie screen where you can safely play out scenarios and rewrite them and recreate endings to very painful things. So this idea of having a mind's eye open is very important, because if we can't see it in our mind, we can't create it. So having a clear vision of what your life would look like if you had the healing that you needed and that you deserved. Having a clear vision of how you want your child's life to look. Having a clear vision of how you want your home to look and your life and all of those things, the future, your communities, being able to envision that is connected with this internal focus. So this focus, you can look up with our eyes closed. You can look up with our eyes open. I think it's referred to as the drunken Buddha when you do it with your eyes open. But even these little subtle internal mindfulness practices have a very powerful impact. And the specific impact that this one has is to put pressure, stretch your optical nerve. And by stretching your optical nerve, it stimulates your pituitary and pineal glands. And those glands are very important for connection to our spirit, connection to our spiritual beliefs, connection to creator, connection to those we love, and our ability to have visions and hold a vision and to see something in our mind's eye. So that's the first point of focus. The second point of focus is at the tip of the nose. And this can be done with eyes closed or eyes open. And you can slowly obtain the focus by looking at your finger kind of far away, bringing it to your nose, and your eyes will naturally go that way. Will your eyes get stuck? No, your eyes won't get stuck. And this specific point of focus creates a point of stillness and neutrality. The final internal point of focus for your eyes is to focus down, like you're looking at your chin. And again, you can do that by following your finger in and looking all the way down. And with this focus, you want to pretend like you're looking through the inside of your skull to your chin. And this is to focus on the moon. And by focusing at this point, we can develop a better sense of the hidden within our own psyche, with in our own subconscious. The way the mind works is things that we can't process or think about when they're happening. They just get shoved back into the back of our minds, literally. And like 90% of our memory is in the subconscious. And that's why we can't access things, because they're not conscious, unless we do practices to help access our subconscious. And mindfulness, meditative practices allow us to clean out our subconscious, which is really important, because since it holds such a high amount of our memories, if we don't clear out, it's like when your phone gets too overloaded, it starts running all weird and funky. We're the same way. When our nervous systems and our subconscious becomes too overloaded, we start running all weird and funky like our phones, because we're electric, magnetic beings. We require maintenance too. So these mindfulness practices are like the housekeepers for our subconscious. And I believe too that mindfulness practices help us housekeep our DNA. We can keep our DNA maintained and healthy, and clean out the trauma. So those are all the basics of mindfulness practices that you'll need to know for the upcoming exercises that I'm going to walk us through. Exercises for managing stress, exercises for preventing illness, exercises for recovering from illness, exercises to promote recovery from substance use, all of the things. So keep following. If you feel called, subscribe, like. Even better, if you feel like this series would help somebody that you know that suffers from symptoms of historical trauma, feel free to share it with them.